The scene bursts open not with quiet dinner chatter, but with a heated exchange in a crowded restaurant, an elite fusion bistro where power plays out in subtleties, or at least it usually does. Here, Vivian Kingsley, a socialite known for her charm but also her biting edge, is enjoying her evening with friends when Naomi Flores, a young waitress, approaches. Naomi is attentive, graceful, but under the surface, there's a quiet resilience, a resilience that will soon be tested. As Naomi serves Vivian's table, a slight misunderstanding in the order ignites Vivian's ire. Her tone sharpens, and the clinking of glasses fades into the background. Eyes begin to turn. A smirk forms on Vivian's lips as her friends chuckle uncomfortably, her words dripping with an arrogance that's impossible to ignore. In an instant, Vivian's frustration escalates, and she stands up, doing the unthinkable. She raises her hand and delivers a stinging slap across Naomi's face. Gasps ripple through the room, and a hush falls. Naomi's face flushes with both pain and shock. Her hand trembles as she resists the urge to respond, aware of all eyes on her. But it's not over. This slap marks the beginning of a dramatic unraveling. It was a Friday night at Verona and Company, the kind of place where chandeliers dripped with crystals and seats were reserved months in advance. Patrons arrived dressed to impress, each table a carefully orchestrated performance of style and subtlety. At one of the central tables, Vivian Kingsley sat surrounded by her entourage, executives, society figures, people who lived for her approval. Vivian, in her sparkling dress and impeccable makeup, radiated a confidence that could be described as regal, or, to some, imperious. Vivian was halfway through her third glass of wine when Naomi Flores arrived at the table, balancing a tray with effortless grace. Naomi, a young woman with a quiet resilience, had worked at Verona and Company for 3 years. She was known for her calm demeanor and her natural warmth with patrons. But tonight, Naomi's patience was about to be tested. Vivian barely glanced at Naomi, instead barking out, "Where's my salad?" Her voice cut through the hum of conversation at the table, her tone edged with irritation. Naomi kept her composure, replying in her usual professional tone, "I'm sorry, Miss Kingsley. The kitchen has a small delay tonight. Your order is coming right up." A murmur of tension passed through Vivian's guests. Naomi's words seemed to strike a nerve, and Vivian's eyes flashed. "A delay? This is Verona and Company. I expect better," she snapped. She leaned back in her chair, an exaggerated sigh escaping her lips as she glanced around the table, her friends offering sympathetic nods and murmurs of agreement. As Naomi turned to walk away, Vivian's voice shot through the air again. "I'm speaking to you, young lady. When I pay to dine, I expect service. Do you understand?" There was no attempt to hide the condescension in her tone. The subtle but undeniable insult hung in the air, and Naomi stopped, the composure on her face barely holding. In an attempt to smooth things over, Naomi turned back and managed a tight smile. "Of course, Miss Kingsley. I'll see to it that your salad is brought out right away." But it wasn't enough. Vivian's fingers drummed against the table, her dissatisfaction growing. She scoffed loudly, making sure her friends heard. "Unbelievable," she muttered, just loud enough for everyone nearby to notice. Naomi's hand tightened around her tray, and for a moment, her professionalism faltered. Vivian must have caught this flicker because, in that instant, her expression changed. Without warning, she stood up, eyes locked on Naomi with a searing intensity. Her hand lashed out, faster than anyone could react, connecting with Naomi's cheek in a swift, shocking slap. The sound echoed across the room, halting conversations, freezing waitstaff, and drawing every pair of eyes to the scene. Naomi stood, her cheeks stinging and her mind racing, stunned into silence. Around her, whispers began to swirl like a rising storm, eyes wide and mouth slightly agape. She felt the hot flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck, her dignity crumbling under the weight of humiliation. But she refused to give Vivian the satisfaction of a reaction. Vivian, on the other hand, seemed unfazed, merely flicking her hand as though brushing off dust. With an air of entitlement, She sat back down, the expression on her face unreadable, her friends exchanging uncomfortable glances. One of Vivian's friends, Lila Green, leaned over and murmured, "Vivian, maybe you went a little overboard." Vivian cut her off with a glare. "Overboard? I'm the customer. I pay their bills," she retorted, her voice low but steely. "And when I say I want something done right, I expect it." Naomi, meanwhile, inhaled deeply, gathering what remained of her composure. She met Vivian's gaze for just a moment, a look of silent defiance, and turned on her heel, striding back toward the kitchen. As she walked, she could feel the weight of every stare, but her father's words echoed in her mind. "Never let them steal your pride." It was a mantra she had lived by, a lifeline she would cling to in this moment of complete vulnerability. By the time Naomi returned to the staff area, her hands still trembled, her mind racing as she processed the slap. She clutched the edge of the countertop, willing herself to breathe, to calm down. But there was no erasing what had happened. One of her co-workers, Marco, was already by her side, his face stricken with a mixture of outrage and sympathy. "Naomi," he whispered, "are you okay?" That was beyond unacceptable. She gave a short nod, barely able to meet his eyes. "I'll manage. Just need a minute." Unbeknownst to them, a fellow diner had recorded the incident, and within minutes, the video began circulating on social media. The clip of Vivian's hand connecting with Naomi's cheek, the shocking sound of the slap, Naomi's stoic reaction. All of it became fodder for the internet's insatiable appetite for drama. Hashtags like #StandWithNaomi and #JusticeForNaomi started trending, bringing thousands of comments, shares, and messages of support from people who didn't even know her but were outraged on her behalf. In the hours following the incident, news spread like wildfire, reaching not only Verona and Company's management but also the media. Naomi's face, captured in that brief, painful moment, appeared on news stories and social media platforms, accompanied by commentary on privilege, power, and respect. The public's sympathy for Naomi was palpable, but so was the anger toward Vivian. The narrative was clear. Vivian Kingsley, the affluent socialite, had crossed a line. That night, Naomi went home to her small, cozy apartment. She sat on her bed, scrolling through her phone, the outpouring of support overwhelming yet strangely comforting. Messages from strangers offering encouragement, stories of similar experiences, and even messages from local advocacy groups filled her inbox. But amid the solidarity, a feeling of emptiness gnawed at her. She felt exposed, her private life now a spectacle. Just then, her phone rang. It was her father, Judge Elias Flores, a man known for his unshakable commitment to justice. A man who had inspired her to be strong, resilient, and to face injustice with dignity. "Naomi," his deep voice came through the line, filled with a quiet strength that had always comforted her. "I saw the news." There was a silence as Naomi struggled to find her voice. "Dad, it was humiliating. I didn't know what to do." Judge Flores took a measured breath. "I know this isn't easy, Naomi, but remember what I taught you. Power only intimidates those who think they don't have any. You have the power to choose how you respond to this." His words, always so carefully chosen, sank in. "But how, Dad? I feel like everyone's watching, like I have no control over what people see, what they think. Let them watch. Show them who you are. You are my daughter, and you've faced worse with grace. This is no different." Naomi felt a surge of courage. Her father's unwavering faith in her, his firm belief that she could rise above, reminded her that she wasn't alone in this. And perhaps, in the glare of public attention, she could reclaim her dignity on her own terms. Meanwhile, the video of the slap continued to spread, sparking a conversation about privilege and respect, fueled by countless posts dissecting the incident. People called for accountability, demanding an apology from Vivian, with hashtags evolving into a trending campaign. Over the next few days, media outlets reached out to Naomi for her side of the story. Initially hesitant, she decided to address the issue, driven by the overwhelming support and her father's words of encouragement. She issued a statement that was firm yet measured, expressing her disappointment and her hope that people could learn from the incident. Vivian, on the other hand, faced mounting pressure from the public, her social circle, and her business associates. She tried to dismiss the incident as a misunderstanding, a slip-up that had been blown out of proportion. But her attempt at damage control fell flat, only further alienating her from those who had once been her allies. Vivian's desperation to salvage her image led her to attend an upcoming charity gala, an event frequented by influential figures, including Judge Elias Flores. She entered with her usual confidence, her publicist by her side, rehearsing statements meant to clarify the incident. But her nerves betrayed her as she scanned the room, her gaze landing on a familiar face, Judge Flores himself. The weight of the moment hit her instantly, and an unfamiliar wave of discomfort settled in her stomach. Her self-assurance began to waver as she approached him, attempting to maintain her composure. But the judge's piercing gaze told her he was already well aware of who she was and of the slap that had shattered her daughter's dignity. As Vivian extended a hand in greeting, Judge Flores' steady voice stopped her in her tracks. "Miss Kingsley," he said, his tone unwavering, "I think we both know why you're here. But let me be clear, my daughter deserves far more than just an apology. She deserves respect, something your behavior has been sorely lacking." Vivian felt a rush of panic as his words echoed in her ears, leaving her with no easy escape. Following the uncomfortable encounter with Judge Flores at the gala, whispers began circulating among the elite attendees. People who once sought Vivian's approval or flaunted their connections to her now kept their distance. A subtle but sharp shift had occurred in how others viewed her. The once admired socialite now represented a cautionary tale of unchecked privilege. As the weeks passed, the consequences of Vivian's actions grew more apparent. The charity circuits and upscale parties that had once been her playground became arenas of hushed judgment. Friends who'd once gravitated toward her power and wealth now seemed wary, as if being seen with her could damage their own reputations. At one of her favorite boutiques, where she'd always been treated like royalty, the sales clerk barely made eye contact. Even the staff at her gym, where she used to exchange pleasantries with fellow members, now only offered her stilted, obligatory greetings. For the first time in her life, Vivian began to feel the sting of exclusion. In contrast, Naomi's life was blossoming in unexpected ways. Despite the emotional toll of the incident, she found strength in the support pouring in from her father, her friends, and even strangers who reached out with messages of solidarity. A few days after the gala, Naomi's phone buzzed with a message from Alyssa Chun, the head of a local advocacy group dedicated to promoting workplace equality and fair treatment in service industries. Alyssa, who had also seen the viral video, reached out to offer support, as well as a platform for Naomi to share her story. After careful thought and a lot of encouragement from her father, Naomi agreed. She attended an event hosted by Alyssa's organization, where she shared her experience, her voice steady as she recounted not just the slap, but the years of microaggressions she had endured as a woman of color working in a luxury setting. Her story resonated with the audience, who erupted in applause at the end of her speech. Naomi's confidence surged, and her perspective began to shift. For so long, she had seen herself as just an employee, silently enduring the indignities that came her way. But now, as she stood in front of a supportive audience, she realized she was more than a waitress. She was a voice for those who couldn't speak up, an advocate for respect and equality. Back in her world, Vivian struggled to salvage her social standing. Desperate to control the narrative, she reluctantly agreed to give an interview to a lifestyle magazine known for its sympathetic portrayals of celebrities in crisis. But the interview didn't go as planned. The journalist asked pointed questions, gently but persistently pressing Vivian to acknowledge her actions. "Vivian, there's a lot of public interest in this incident," the journalist began, her tone respectful but firm. "Do you believe your reaction to Ms. Flores was appropriate?" Vivian's rehearsed responses faltered under the scrutiny. She'd hoped for a platform to share her side, to shift the blame to the stress and pressures she claimed she'd been under. But under the journalist's unyielding gaze, her usual confidence crumbled. By the time the interview was published, it was clear to readers that Vivian's contrition was superficial at best. The public backlash only intensified. And it wasn't just her social life that was affected. Board members from one of the nonprofits Vivian chaired quietly suggested she step down. Invitations to exclusive events dwindled, replaced by polite but unmistakable refusals. The same media that had once fawned over her socialite status now turned critical, describing her as an emblem of outdated entitlement. Naomi's newfound confidence didn't go unnoticed. As her story spread, she was invited to share her experience at more events, even appearing on a talk show where she discussed the need for change in service industry environments. She spoke about the resilience it took to stay professional in the face of disrespect, highlighting how people often overlook the humanity of those in service roles. For the first time, Naomi felt a sense of agency. No longer was she simply a bystander in her own life. She was actively shaping her own narrative. Her dignity, once shattered by that single slap, was being rebuilt stronger than before. Judge Flores, ever a steadfast supporter, watched with pride as Naomi transformed her pain into empowerment. "This is just the beginning, Naomi," he said during one of their conversations. "People need to see strength like yours." Encouraged by her father and motivated by her experiences, Naomi began advocating for workplace training on respectful treatment of staff and inclusive work environments. She joined Alyssa's organization as a part-time speaker and consultant, using her story to inspire change in restaurants, hotels, and other businesses that had traditionally overlooked issues of bias and discrimination. It was at one of these advocacy events, held at a City Hall auditorium, that Naomi and Vivian's paths crossed again. Vivian had been invited, though reluctantly, by a mutual contact who thought attending might help rehabilitate her public image. Naomi was on stage, sharing her story with a packed room, her words precise, her presence commanding. As she spoke, she scanned the audience and noticed Vivian sitting stiffly near the back, her face a study of discomfort. For a moment, Naomi felt a surge of anxiety, the memory of the slap and its humiliation returning in a rush. But then she met her father's eyes in the front row, his calm, encouraging gaze steadying her. She took a deep breath and continued speaking, her voice unwavering as she described the importance of dignity and respect in every interaction, regardless of social standing. When the event ended, Vivian waited in the shadows, hesitant yet compelled to speak with Naomi. As Naomi walked toward the exit, Vivian approached, her face pale. "Naomi," she said, her voice softer than usual, "I wanted to apologize. What I did was unacceptable, and I didn't realize what it would mean." Naomi met Vivian's gaze, her own expression unreadable. "It's not just about realizing it now, Vivian," she replied. "It's about treating people with basic respect every day." Vivian seemed to struggle with the weight of Naomi's words. She glanced away, her eyes filled with a mixture of shame and regret. But Naomi had already moved on, walking past her with quiet dignity. Vivian's apology marked a small turning point for her, but it was far from the redemption she had hoped for. Her peers continued to distance themselves, the stain of her actions clinging to her reputation. Former friends avoided her at parties, while others openly expressed their disappointment, a mirror held up to her past behavior. Her lavish lifestyle became a hollow echo of what it had once been. Naomi, on the other hand, flourished. Her advocacy work led her to collaborate with more organizations, helping to create training programs on respect and inclusivity. Verona and Company even implemented a series of workshops inspired by Naomi's story, bringing lasting change to the workplace. In time, Naomi's reputation within the community grew as a symbol of resilience and integrity. People no longer saw her as the young waitress who had endured humiliation, but as a powerful voice for dignity and respect. Judge Flores, too, watched as his daughter became a leader in her own right, embodying the values he had instilled in her. The community at large also felt the impact. Conversations about social equality gained momentum, inspiring local businesses to adopt similar policies that promoted fair treatment. What had begun as a moment of personal pain had transformed into a catalyst for positive change, with Naomi at the forefront. In the end, Vivian's story served as a cautionary tale, a reminder that unchecked entitlement has consequences. Naomi, on the other hand, became an emblem of quiet strength, a testament to the power of dignity and resilience in the face of adversity. The contrast between Vivian's isolation and Naomi's rise reflected a simple but powerful truth. Respect, kindness, and integrity ultimately outshine wealth or status. And as the city began to embrace a more inclusive and respectful culture, Naomi's journey stood as a beacon for others who sought justice and respect in their own lives.